About 2.5 years ago, I took my freshly grown starter, fed part of it that I would use in a bake, and put the rest in the bottom drawer of my fridge as a backup. I never meant for it to not be fed, but I ended up feeding what was left over from the bake instead. The starter just sat in the back of the drawer for 2.5 years until a few minutes ago when I took it out to see if you can use a starter that's been hibernating for that long for anything. We're venturing into uncharted territory here, and the outcome is as much a mystery to me as it is to you. Will the starter revive after its long hibernation, or will it be a sourdough disaster? The suspense is palpable. Hi, I'm Sune, and I'm a food geek. Today we're embarking on a culinary adventure with my old starter. You know, the one that's been chilling in the fridge for a couple of years? People often say that you can keep your starter in the fridge for a few weeks. But what about years? This will be an exciting experiment that will either prove or disprove that statement. So my plan is the following. I'll bake a loaf of bread with the starter straight from the fridge. Then I will start a feeding regimen. Once the starter starts growing, I will bake another loaf. Lastly, I will bake one more loaf once the starter is super active. At the end, we'll compare the 3 loaves, each representing a different stage of the starter's activity. The anticipation is building, isn't it? If you'd like to support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon. You can also buy some merch, or use the super thanks, or use the links for tools and ingredients in the description. Those were the words. This is the experiment.
This is an experiment, not a recipe. If you'd like to know how to make sourdough bread, my master recipe is linked in the description. First, I fed part of the starter to get it going. I fed it at a 1:3:3 ratio and put it in my sourdough home, set to 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. While that was looking out for itself, I made bread with the starter out of the fridge. Mix all the ingredients for the dough. Left it to hydrate for an hour. Then I performed 3 sets of stretch and folds. Fermented it and shaped the dough. I let it stay overnight in the fridge, and then I baked it. On the 3rd day, I started to see some activity in the starter, and I decided I would bake using it. On the 4th day, it grew a bit more, and on the 5th day, it grew about 50%. Then I grew the starter 1 to 50 to 50. This was the result the following day. That's an active starter. So I made another bread, mixed the dough, stretch and folds, pre-shape, final shaping, and I baked it the next morning. That looks nice. The other 2 loaves had been frozen to make the comparison. I cut them in half, and this is the result. As you can see, while it did rise, the first bread from the left suffered because of the severely sluggish starter. The one baked after 3 days in the middle looks quite alright. I think many people would love to bake bread like that. The bread on the right was baked after 5 days when the starter was obviously very healthy again. I mean, look at the size of that thing. It's important to note that each loaf of bread was made using the same recipe. The taste of each bread was comparable, but the texture in the first bread felt too dense. Despite the starter being very sour when it came out, it didn't really make a difference in the perceived sourness. Quite interesting.
So, storing a starter in the fridge for an extended period of time is definitely possible. Is it practical? No, probably not. I made a starter from scratch in 4 days, and it took 5 days to get this one up to full speed. There's something to be said about this starter being my original starter in case something had broken along the way. It is cool, but nostalgia doesn't make bread, right? I'm eager to hear your thoughts on this experiment. Have you ever tried something similar? What were your results? Your experiences and insights are valuable to me and the community, so please share them in the comments below. I hope you learned something today. See you next time.